Those seldom spoken of in the realm of streaming. I do feel that Apple TV, and I've expressed this point of view many times, comes across to me as the studio with the general expectation of competence that is fulfilled. True, it helps when you have such a budget, like Apple TV does, and they have a pretty hefty, sum of money given their industry in regards to the tech market. But what they've boasted right now in context to their streaming offerings, I've been very pleased by. Whether they be shows that I've covered or shows I personally watched, I'm very impressed with their execution of craft. And a story like this easily fits in regard for me for what I'm familiar with in content offerings. I feel that it's a great fit for them. It's going to be a very sentimental story. It's going to engage with a lot of viewers. So Dear Edward, it's a relatively new series. I just saw the trailer popped out the other day, and while I haven't given it much of a deep look beyond the synopsis, so I haven't looked in detail to check and see if any of the cast members are familiar to me on a first-name basis. They do seem to be going for a majority of younger actors, which some of these names might be familiar to you. Maybe they're not for me, but it's fun to engage in new content, perhaps see developing presences in the acting field out there, in talents, again, that you're not necessarily the most exposed to. I feel that the series in itself boasts a real strength in the story and a relatability for maybe many people who have gone through the type of tragedy of losing a loved one or several loved ones amid a devastation, whether it be in focus of a plane crash or some other life tragedy, maybe a car accident, maybe just an unexpected death in the family. We can all relate to an unexpected death and the type of pain and tragedy that brings up in terms of an emotional response. Dear Edward seems pretty strong, but if you're not engaged with the series before, even just in looking and perusing the general pitch, I'll present that for you from what IMDb has to describe about it. The series follows Edward, a 12-year-old boy who survives but lost his family in a devastating commercial plane crash as he tries to make sense of life along with a group of others affected, and new friendships, romances, and communities are formed. So I like seeing that there's that goal point of, again, exploration of others in regards to a commiseration of a related tragedy, right? So it's not necessarily directed specifically to Edward alone, but to all these other people, but Edward is the key character of focus. It's also, I think, great in realistic context, if this were to happen in real life, to anybody it's of course devastating, but to put the series in terms of a focal perspective on a 12-year-old, so a tween, not necessarily a teen or a young adult, it's somebody at a very young age where perhaps death is not necessarily as, what's the word I'm looking for? It's maybe not as well established of an experience, perhaps some other people, perhaps maybe adults who have dealt with maybe more than one death in a family or of a friend. For someone who's 12 years old, it's going to be a much younger and youthful experience. And it's going to be taken quite differently. Again, like I said, it's a very dramatic story. I'm interested to see, again, the character journey here. I'm imagining this is where the series is going to go. It's mostly going to be based around a drama, a sense with, I'm sure, a more contemplative scope in regard to character development, character interactions, community building. I think there's a general, incline here with the series that will put this in a good direction for many people. Even, again, people who perhaps, I would imagine, those of you who, if you have experienced a tragedy of death in an unexpected situation, like, let's say, for example, in context of it's a plane crash, I think the series will deeply resonate with you in a way that is perhaps, it could be a reminder and a re-trigger of that type of emotional pain, or it could be a bit of a cathartic resonance in knowing that maybe you're not alone in your experiences. I think there's a variety of approaches that this series could take, but I'm generally imagining it based upon Apple TV. This is going to be handled respectfully, quite competently, and professionally. Let's take a look at this and see the evolution of a series in a little over 2-minute trailer. It's pretty good, I'd say, duration to get a good look at this.
Edward, I'm going to take care of you.
Already I get a vibe based on the title card. Like, this is going to be pretty good. High quality. And this kid has a lot of media attention now because he was a survivor.
This is grief counseling? Anyone's invited to speak.
People meet me and they think she's the woman whose nephew survived the plane crash. But they forget I'm also the woman who lost my big sister.
I like the counseling setting. Again, it has that cathartic edge.
Yeah. Drinking champagne by myself out of a juice glass.
Some of these faces are familiar to me.
Lost my husband.
There's a couple
lost
so
my
far.
best friend. But he had another life. So I don't know how to piece it all together.
Character studies, exploration,
Why is everyone writing to him?
hyper relevant.
Because he survived.
I've heard of Parenthood.
I want to run away too.
Bit of a project as well. I haven't seen either for myself.
I don't know who I am. Join the club.
So this is very fresh in presence.
I'm sure you've heard great things.
Oh, no secrets in grief group.
My grandmother paved the way, and there is no one more committed to carrying on her legacy than I am.
Strong. Good execution.
But I'm going to do my best to take care of you.
A very homely feel to the cinematography as well.
That will never go away.
It's wonderfully approachable. As should be expected of a story like this. Even if you personally have not experienced a story like this for yourself, it feels approachable in a way that you can easily have a sense of compassion for the victims, and that could be translated very well in a realistic sense. It's very grounded. I love the counseling setting. I love seeing how the story sort of epicenters around that being the main. I'm imagining, again, that's where the community is established, is through that, well, where it starts. Right? That's sort of the instigator setting. Of course, some would argue that's the plane crash, that's what caused it, but I'd say where these characters come together, where all these stories converge, is going to be that counseling environment. And I think that group counseling approach, in terms of a presentation, that's a good choice. And to center the story in many different dynamics, I'd say in context for this kid, formation of identity, that was pretty clear towards the end of a trailer in terms of what's vocalized. The probably undesired celebrity status, right? Getting all these letters in the mail, having the press follow you, like, you're the lone survivor. Well, you're not the lone survivor, but you're, well, is he the lone survivor? I don't know if he was a lone survivor, but, here's a kid who survived where his family perished, right? He's probably not going to want the type of attention, and dealing with that as a kid, right? You're not an adult, so it's not as easy. You're growing in a world that moves too fast in terms of what normality would otherwise issue from the general population. I think, again, like I said, it has a great organization, converging everybody in these or converging everybody through the setting of the counseling setting, but then expanding, it's spinning off of that, maybe in showcasing this character in one scene versus another in this scene, exploring those characters. We'll see how well the series establishes itself in presence and prominence of each story. There's 10 episodes, I believe. I don't know if it's a limited series or if it's planning maybe more ongoing entries, but it has 10 episodes to evolve its vision. Based on the duration, so I'll probably anticipate maybe around like 50 minutes or so, 40, 50 minutes, somewhere around the general time frame. Like you get maybe a standard TV episode. I feel that the show evokes a great presentation, good cinematography use. I like the lens flare as well. It's very approachable. The color palette, too, it's very sentimental. It has an emotional basis that I feel really connects the story with the larger viewing audience. Even for somebody, again, who, like myself, has not necessarily experienced a death as a result of a plane crash. Although I recently had a tragedy come up in regard to I won't go into detail, but transportation devices and potential loss of family. Miraculously, that didn't happen. But it's a very relatable thing. People deal with accidents all the time in regards to ones that offer a lethal, let's not use the word reward, a lethal product. And none of us desire for that type of life or that type of loss, right? Especially experiencing that or amidst losing a loved one. So this story, I imagine, is going to connect very well to a general audience. Maybe not necessarily, again, I think it's going to connect to anybody with a compassionate heart, which hopefully is all of us. But for some, it's going to be a very personal experience, and for others, it's going to be an experience that we can easily commiserate and understand the characters. And I hope that I would imagine there's going to be sufficient world building and character building in regard to the investigations here with the different members of this counseling setting and those who are in the midst of this plane crash. Maybe each episode focuses on, it wouldn't focus on a specific character then. like in each episode, because Edward, it's called Dear Edward, and they have so many different characters, so Edward is the focal point. Maybe again, the series in part is seeing, there's going to be spin-off stories, I imagine, in regards to each character through that main line, but Edward is the focal point, and then that convergence area being the counseling setting, that's where all these stories are going to mix together. It's going to be, that's the unified perspective. I think it seems, at least from what I'm seeing right now, constructed very well, and it boasts a competence that I do feel puts Apple TV in a much better regard in regards to their content offerings. In comparison to other streaming services where the landscape, yes, some projects might be great, others not so much. It's varied generally from platform to platform. But that's generally a mainstay to be expected. Apple TV, from what I've seen, I would be tempted to say universally boasts competent appeal. And yet hardly anybody speaks about this particular market, even though they've got such a good library of shows. Maybe Dear Edward will get conversation flooding in. Maybe more people will flock on to Apple TV because of this series. I don't know. I keep wondering, yet no one hops on. It's seemingly, because no one talks about this Apple TV programs, for the most part, maybe with some exception. What are your guys' thoughts of Dear Edward? Let me know down below if you so wish to disclose your perspective. I think, again, it's a pretty competent series, very emotional, cathartic, resonant, deep, foundational, understandable. It connects easily with an audience. And I would imagine, given the navigation of the series and what I expect of it based on, again, its branding, this is going to be a very well-presented show. I see enough credit in the quality of the story's pitch, as well as the execution based on the main trailer, the first, at least for now, the first season, or if it's a limited series, it's only 10 episodes. I see a competence that boasts some strength here. And I'm very interested to see the series deliver and to learn more about it, perhaps. Maybe in the future we'll get something else new, and I'll keep an open door on that. But from what I'm seeing thus far, first introduction, I think Dear Edward looks more than serviceable as an entry in the Apple TV original line. I think it's going to be a series that many people probably try out. I think it's going to be easy to engage with. I'm excited to watch it for myself and try it out and learn these characters' stories. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.